Thank you very much, Pooh. Thank you for all of you for staying, and indeed, just extend congratulations again to Pooh for organizing a really great meeting. He's left me with this unenviable task of actually trying to sum up today what I hope you'll all agree to be an excellent really day, summing up what we'd interested to know in artificial intelligence. My remit really is really to show where the BSG come in and how we'd like to continue to support this. I hope most of you are aware of the research strategy that our specialty have, which is the envy of other specialties. This came about really because of the understanding that we were really lagging behind in terms of the disparity between the disease burden and the amount of cost in research funding that actually was feeding into it. And it was really an effort to try and address this, hence the aim of the strategy. Obviously, it covered encompassed various aspects within it. There are clinical research groups, and within that, you've heard Jonathan and Sebastian talk about big data and how that feeds in with the National Endoscopy Database, etc. But also, we are partnering with the Royal College and other key stakeholders in terms of developing this, and artificial intelligence and where that's moving also comes within that remit. Another important aspect is actually looking at trainees, and we've hinted at some of you have hinted throughout this about how artificial intelligence could actually impact on in terms of learning. And of course, you've seen today links with industry. And so in effect, we've touched on very much all the various areas that we have seen and heard of from today. This is just an excerpt from the strategy, which is from 2018, talking about big data. But I see from Sebastian's talk today, I think we're going to really have to revisit this in terms of some of the outlined issues and problems that we might face. But the Topol report, which you might have seen already, does highlight this very well, particularly the section on artificial intelligence and robotics, which he has written very well, particularly this statement, really, which I think is at the heart of it, which we've only touched on very briefly today, which is the impact on workforce. Because without that, and the workforce coming through, that is, so the trainees that are coming through, if we don't address that issue, it's going to be a significant issue. I pulled out this slide from a US-based company. It's only about a year old, but just really to highlight the amount. These are the top 10 AI applications occurring, and the amount that's being poured into it. I mean, we're talking billions, of which the vast majority are actually in healthcare. Starting with robotic-assisted surgery to nurse assistants, etc., dose error reduction, and also for those undertaking clinical trials, even some ways of identifying patients. So there's a huge remit for artificial intelligence, particularly in gastroenterology. Interestingly, cybersecurity is right at the end of that. You've already seen this slide that Boo has presented in terms of randomized trials in gastroenterology 4. Interestingly, all based in China, but it's out there, and it is coming to the fore. So it's something that we need to really embrace and start to think about in terms of future research with it. So just finally, and this is my last slide really, I think that we had a really good talk in terms of helping us understand and break down what we mean by artificial intelligence, the talk about definitions. We need to get that clear when we're talking about it. I think I agree with Boo that it's really, we should be looking at artificial intelligence in terms of augmenting the clinician, not replacing it, but it's really there to support the clinician in improving and doing what he does even better. There's also what we need to think about, we've heard also from Rebecca this morning about handling of data and understanding what that means, and the model that you use. I think it's important as clinicians to try and make some attempt of understanding what that is, because without that, we won't actually understand the output. And of course, you've seen today the various and the importance of industry supporting these ventures. Some of the technology very similar, and some others different, and it's up to us really as clinicians, I think, to try and tease out and work out as the end user what is likely to be beneficial for us. We've heard today 2 talks from NHSX, which I think is really remarkable for a organization within the NHS to have started in last July and to have progressed so much in the space of 6 months is really remarkable, and therefore gives me confidence that I think whatever NHSX together with the artificial intelligence laboratory is going to be well supported, and I think there will be much to see from there in the future. So where do we go from here? I think one of the things that came across to me really was, and I've been often maybe subtly unconscious about it, is your expectation of technology. I think we need to understand and appreciate what technology can do, and therefore realign our expectations accordingly. There is really a huge remit and to really apply artificial intelligence in terms of learning for trainees coming through and improving. So maybe we talked about endoscopists, and maybe in terms of the expert endoscopists, it may not make much difference. But I think for the novice, for someone who has never seen what these key polyps are, so on and so forth, that I think has an amazing role really to improve their learning. So their learning curve can be a lot quicker in using these sort of models and artificial intelligence pipelines that we've seen. I think this is one of the huge elephants in the room that we kind of touched on today. We talked a little bit about it in Lawrence's meeting last month. I'm not sure whether we actually came to any conclusions, but at least we had a good discussion with 3 philosophers, which was interesting. But it really is an issue, and I think there has to be safeguarding in place, really, because before we start using this, we do need to have some understanding of what the perimeters and the fencing that we need to have in place. I've touched on this because the NHS can be an advantage because it's huge in terms of its workforce and its impact in the UK, but also that in itself can be its limitation in terms of how do you actually institute change in an institution that's so big, lethargic, and where change can be very difficult to move. I'm hoping actually, after hearing today's talk by Lisa, I'm encouraged that NHSX, I think, will probably change that mindset, and I think we're hopefully moving to a new era where NHS is actually not going to move through the lethargic ways that it has in the past. We've touched on this in terms of teleendoscopy. There's telemedicine. The first trial of telemedicine is already out by a pediatrician in Bradford, Leeds, a good friend of mine, where he's piloting the use of telemedicine and remote monitoring heartbeat and respiratory sort of auscultation of children in the community to keep them in the community and minimize inpatient emergency admissions in pediatrics. So that is really moving forward. Charlie kind of touched on this a little bit in terms of inflammatory bowel disease, but I'd like to open that wider in terms of digital health passport that we all might eventually have, which is really in effect of saying this is personalized medicine. So it has your omics data together with your potential drug allergies and so on, all within a small digital passport, so that wherever you present anywhere in the world, you get a quick synopsis of all your medical problems, including your genomic data, that will hopefully then decide and give you the most optimal care regardless of where you are in the world, really. And finally, I hope to think that the BSG we're trying to embrace this as quickly as possible. Lawrence has talked about this. So together with Boo, there's a BSG, sort of a special interest group that has been formed really to take on this field, because there are different avenues looking at not just in endoscopy, but in teaching and learning, but also in clinical pathways. And I think the focus group will try and keep this all under one umbrella so that the field of gastroenterology can move forward in more uniform manner rather than, and so that we can learn from each other's expertise within our individual fields. So I'm going to leave it at there, and just to say once again, thank you, Boo, for the invitation and great meeting.
Thank you.